drafted in 1789, had no environmental provisions until the year 2005 when they put in something they called the Charter for the Environment. And the French Charter for the Environment is an incredibly inspiring document that not only recognizes that every human being has a right to live in a healthy environment and a responsibility to protect the environment, it also includes fundamental principles of environmental law, like polluters must pay for the damage they cause, and the precautionary principle. And as a result of those constitutional provisions, last year France became the first country in the world to pass a law banning the practice of hydraulic fracturing or fracking, which is used for oil and gas and has a whole host of potential environmental and health impacts. In South Africa, when they went to draft their post-apartheid constitution in the mid-1990s, they were told by constitutional law experts around the world not to include frivolous rights like the right to water and the right to a healthy environment, because these rights were incapable of being enforced, and by putting them in the Constitution, they would actually create cynicism about over-promising. Well, fortunately, Nelson Mandela and his colleagues ignored the advice of constitutional experts from around the world, and since 1996, they have overhauled every environmental law in that country, a number of the Water Act, the Water Services Act, local government statutes. In every one of those laws, they've put the right to a healthy environment and the right to water as overriding fundamental purposes of the law. And they've also made a major investment in drinking water infrastructure, with the result that since 1996, clean drinking water has been extended to over 10 million, predominantly poor and black South Africans. Nelson Mandela calls this one of the greatest accomplishments of South Africa's flourishing democracy. And who can argue with Nelson Mandela? And then the last example I have is this is a picture of an oil spill off the coast of Brazil by the oil company Chevron. This happened last year. And Brazil has a very powerful set of environmental provisions in its constitution, including the right to a healthy environment. And so within days of this spill happening, Chevron was fined $28 million by the government of Brazil. Now, to put that number in a Canadian context, $28 million is 10 times the total amount of fines that have been levied under the history of Canada's most important pollution law, the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, since it was passed in 1988. That's the total from 1988 to 2011, 1/10 of what Brazil did in a week after this oil spill. Now, the Brazilian government, we've got icing on the cake and a cherry on top of that. The icing is that they are currently in court seeking billions of dollars in damages in a civil lawsuit against Chevron. And the cherry on the top of that is they've also filed criminal charges against Chevron executives, seeking up to 30 years of imprisonment for those executives. They've taken the passports away from those executives, so they can't leave the country until the prosecution is run its course. So that's an incredible story as well. So having looked at the impact that stronger environmental laws can have on environmental protection, the next area I looked at was, well, what happens to the court system? Are people able to actually go to court and enforce their right to a healthy environment against governments and against polluters? And again, I looked at 92 countries. This was a bit more difficult because some countries don't have their court decisions available online. But I found 60 countries where there have been court decisions at the highest level, at either the Supreme Court or the Constitutional Court, recognizing and implementing and enforcing the right to a healthy environment. So for example, in Finland, there was a hydroelectric company that wanted to build a dam on the Vuotos River, which is an area that includes critical habitat for migratory birds, internationally renowned, and the Finnish court said it would be a violation of Finland's constitutional right to a healthy environment to go ahead with that hydroelectric project, so it was stopped in its tracks. In Portugal, you can no longer build a gas station within a certain distance of a school because of the concerns about the adverse health and environmental impacts on children. In Costa Rica, there have been literally hundreds of court decisions on the right to a healthy environment. In fact, the first case in Costa Rica was back in 1992 when a 10-year-old boy riding his bicycle to and from school every day noticed trucks were dumping garbage in a river near his house. And he, I don't know how he found the wherewithal to do this, but he wrote a letter to the Constitutional Court of Costa Rica. The Constitutional Court appointed appointed a lawyer to transform the child's letter into a formal legal petition, and then had a lawyer argue that case before it, and found that there was a violation of the right to a healthy environment. And since then, there have been many cases in Costa Rica dealing with clean air, stopping the development in beaches to protect habitat of endangered sea turtles. And so these constitutional rights to a healthy environment are protecting not only human health, but environmental health as well. And this is a picture of one of the world's most famous environmental lawyers, a guy from the Philippines named Tony Oposa. Back in the early 1990s, Tony Oposa filed a lawsuit on behalf of his children and future generations, arguing that the liquidation of old-growth forests in the Philippines was a violation of their constitutional right to a healthy environment. And as soon as that case was filed, the government said, wait a minute, children don't have any standing to bring a lawsuit, and certainly future generations don't. And that case went to the Supreme Court of the Philippines, and the Supreme Court of the Philippines, in a very powerful and poetic judgment, said those children have a constitutional right to live in a healthy environment, and that gives them the right to file lawsuits to protect that right. And more recently, Tony filed a lawsuit seeking the cleanup and restoration of Manila Bay, adjacent to the capital of the Philippines. He filed that lawsuit in 1999. It slowly wove its way through the Filipino court system, and in 2008, the Supreme Court of the Philippines came down with a very powerful judgment, similar to the Beatriz-Mendoza judgment, ordering the government of the Philippines to do a bunch of specific things to clean up Manila Bay. And I just got an email from Tony last week, and he said that he's got the first anecdotal evidence that fisheries are beginning to rebound in Manila Bay for the first time in decades. So that's another sign of inspiration. MC Mehta is another incredible environmental lawyer from India who has actually had dozens of cases reach the highest court of India, the Supreme Court of India, including a case where he learned that air pollution in the vicinity of the Taj Mahal was yellowing that critical cultural heritage of India, and so he brought this case, and it resulted in dozens of factories being closed down and hundreds of factories being forced to install pollution abatement equipment. He was buoyed by the success of that lawsuit and brought a similar lawsuit arguing that it was a violation of the right to a healthy environment for companies to be dumping polluted water into the sacred Ganges River. And again, the Supreme Court of India agreed and closed down a number of factories and ordered pollution abatement equipment to be installed in others. And then most recently, MC Mehta brought a case arguing that the diesel buses in New Delhi were causing air pollution that was violating the constitutional right to a healthy environment. Again, he was successful, and over a period of years, all of the diesel burning buses in New Delhi have been replaced by buses that burn compressed natural gas. And I just found recently a study done by the World Bank that estimates that this change from dirty fuel to clean fuel is saving about 3,700 lives a year in New Delhi alone. So these are remarkable accomplishments by any measure. So having looked at the impact on laws and the impact on court decisions, I also wanted to look at the impact of these constitutional provisions on environmental performance more broadly rather than anecdotally.